What's up, you guys? It's Graham here, and this is absolutely crazy. Believe it or not, President Trump just floated the idea of reducing or even outright eliminating the capital gains tax ahead of midterm elections. And I gotta say, if that actually happens, we could see one of the biggest wealth transfers in American history. After all, the United States hasn't lowered its capital gains tax in more than 2 decades. And the last time this happened, the S&P 500 went on to increase more than 70% over the following 4 years, eventually breaking through to new all-time highs. That's why we really got to break down exactly what's happening, how this might also apply to homes under $2 million, and then most importantly, the chance of this actually passing. Because I have to say, if even part of this becomes law, the impact would be enormous. Although before we start, as usual, if you appreciate the breaking news videos like this, it would mean the world to me if you capital gained that like button and subscribed if you haven't done that already. Yes, I don't like asking for it either, but it helps out tremendously, and as a thank you for doing that, here's a picture of my SpongeBob cells from the first season that I've been collecting. So thanks so much, and also a big thank you to CoverOn for sponsoring this video, but more on that later. Alright, so to start, we need to talk about capital gains tax. For those unaware, a capital gain is just a profit for something you sold. Like you buy a stock for $1,000, sell it for $5,000, and all of a sudden you have a $4,000 capital gain that the IRS wants its piece of. However, the amount of tax that you pay all has to do with how long you've held the investment for. And in this case, if you hold for less than a year, you pay what's called a short-term capital gain. With this, your investment doesn't get any special treatment. It's taxed at your ordinary tax rate, which goes up to 37%. But if you hold it for longer than a year, everything changes, and that's when you get long-term capital gains. And when you look at the tax brackets, it's as low as 0% to 15% to 20%, depending on how much money you make. In fact, these tax rates are so incredible that a married couple could realize up to $100,000 of capital gains and pay $0 to the IRS. But just like with anything, it does come with 2 catches. Number 1, your capital gains stack on top of other income. So if you have a job that pays you $90,000, that fills up the bracket from the bottom up, and then your gain sits on top of it. And then number 2, if you make over $200,000 a year single or $250,000 married, there's a 3.8 net investment tax which gets added onto your capital gains tax rate, which means the top tax bracket's really more like 23.8% instead of 20%, and that threshold has not been updated since it passed in 2013. Thankfully though, this is what leads us to a new concept that's going pretty viral online, and that would be indexing capital gains to inflation. See, here's the problem. When you calculate capital gains, the tax code generally doesn't adjust your original investment to inflation. So if you invested $100,000 in 1990, and today it's worth $255,000, on paper it looks like a $155,000 gain. Congratulations. However, here's the crazy part. Believe it or not, because of inflation, $100,000 in 1990 had roughly the same purchasing power as $255,000 has today. So in real terms, you basically just broke even after holding for 36 years. But on paper, it looks like you've made $155,000 worth of profit that you have to pay tax on, even though the profit is really just inflation. That's why this new discussion from the Trump administration aims to index your capital gains to inflation. This means, as a real example, if you invested $100,000 in 2020 and today it's worth $150,000, on paper it looks like you just made $50,000. But since inflation was 28.8%, under this new proposal, your cost basis would increase to $128,800, and now you'd only pay tax on $21,200 worth of profit, since the rest was really just inflation eating away at the purchasing power of your money. On top of that, we have a second part of this proposal, and that's called the home exemption. See, right now, when you sell a primary residence, you could exclude up to $250,000 of the capital gains being single and up to $500,000 married, as long as you've lived in the house for 2 of the last 5 years. Sounds pretty incredible. But here's the problem. Those numbers were set by the Taxpayer Relief Act of 1997 and have never been indexed to inflation. Not once in nearly 30 years, even though home values have roughly quadrupled. Like, remember, back in 1997, a home exceeding $300,000 to start with was pretty uncommon. But today, that's basically the price of the most entry-level starter house. So this new suggestion wants to change that. If we indexed that same $500,000 in 1997 to inflation, today the exclusion would apply to homes worth roughly $2 million, which is exactly the amount the administration floated. To show you just how significant this is, imagine a couple buys a home in 2005 for $400,000, but sells today for $1.4 million. That's a $1 million capital gain. They then exclude $500,000, and they then pay tax on the remaining $500,000, plus a 3.8 surtax, leaving them with a $119,000 tax bill. But under this new plan, their tax would be zero. And this isn't just a Trump plan. Similar concepts have been floated around before, including the No Tax on Home Sales Act, which would eliminate dollar caps entirely for a primary residence, or the bipartisan More Homes on the Market Act, which would double the limits to $1 million and index all gains to inflation going forward. Although both of those have so far stalled in Congress, that's why we gotta talk about the impact this would actually have on the markets, the chances of this realistically passing, and then what you can most likely do about it. Because the real story here to me isn't just lowering taxes, it's really what happens next. Although before we go into that, I just want to say that when we talk about the stock market, building wealth, and personal finance, a lot of the emphasis really just comes down to making more money and investing, which, don't get me wrong, is great, but protecting what you've already built is really just as important. After all, scams these days become so insanely sophisticated that a fraudulent text, email, or website could look almost identical to the real thing. And it's not just your data that's at risk, it's your money, your time, and your identity, which is why our sponsor, Coveron, is there to help. For those unaware, Coveron helps protect your identity, your accounts, and your money by monitoring the dark web for your personal information, alerting you when login or payment details may have been exposed, and tracking any suspicious activity or charges to your credit. That way you have a chance to catch a problem early before it turns into something a lot more serious. Even better, but unlike other security tools which simply alert you when something goes wrong, Coveron actually steps in to protect you with up to $2 million in identity theft recovery coverage, up to $50,000 in protection against eligible cyber extortion losses, and up to $10,000 if you lose money through an eligible scam or online fraud. They also connect you with real recovery experts who guide you through the calls, paperwork, disputes, and process of restoring your identity and accounts. Really, at the end of the day, cybercrime is no longer rare. It's becoming an everyday occurrence. So protecting your finances is no longer about trying to get the highest return possible, but instead protecting what you've already built. So protect your time, your identity, and your money by going to coveron.com/GrahamStephan, with the link also down below in the description. And the first 100 people get 20% off with the code GrahamStephan at checkout. So again, coveron.com/GrahamStephan with the link below. Thank you so much. Now let's get back to the video. Alright, so in terms of what's happening, the chance of a new capital gains tax actually passing, and the impact that this would realistically have on the market, we need to talk about the lock-in effect. See, right now, capital gains doesn't just tax your money, it literally freezes it. Like, imagine you're sitting on a stock that you bought in 2010 and now you're up 600%. Selling would mean giving up about a quarter of your money to the IRS. So what do people do instead? They simply hold it forever and they don't sell, even though objectively they'd rather own something else. The same thing also applies to housing. In this case, the National Association of Realtors has been warning about what they call the capital gains cliff, where a growing number of older homeowners with huge built-up gains are now discouraged from selling at all because selling triggers the tax bill on an amount that hasn't been updated since 1997. Look, I know this sounds a bit morbid, but there are real examples of an elderly couple who bought their home for $200,000 decades ago, and now it's worth $2 million. They would love to downsize, but selling means that they'd pay a huge tax bill, and that's money that they'd rather leave to their children instead. So what do? They simply don't sell. They just hold on to the house until they pass away, and under the current law, once they do pass away and the children inherit the property, the children get a stepped-up tax basis, allowing them to freely sell the house without any capital gains tax anyway. In estate planning, this is incredibly common, and it just unlocks what many people would be doing regardless, while putting a lot more inventory back onto the market that is desperately needed. In addition to that, we have, second, the market reaction. If this were to pass, initially we would probably see the market surge, and then we would see a wave of selling. Because what a lot of people forget is that this isn't just about keeping more money left over when you invest. It's also giving people an opportunity to sell who have otherwise been waiting on the sidelines. And for those people, that would be a pretty good time to do it. In fact, the last time capital gains taxes were lowered was back in 2003 under George Bush, leading to the market surging over 70% and hitting record highs in the following 4 years. Which of course ends with number 3, the rich get richer. Look, there is just no way around it. The Institute of Taxation and Economic Policy previously argued that indexing capital gains to inflation would reduce taxes disproportionately for the wealthiest households, since they're the ones that own the most assets. Or in other words, this does nothing for the vast majority of Americans unless they invest, and it worsens the federal deficit. Now, of course, there is the counter-argument that increased selling would allow certain asset prices to fall a little more than they would otherwise, allowing people to buy in cheaper, but that assumes that they would be investing in that to begin with, which, let's face it, most people are just not investing. So in terms of whether or not this has a chance of passing, and my own thoughts about if this is actually good for the markets, we need to talk about what happens next. And most importantly, that means the roadblock. Look, the truth is, all the media attention behind Trump wanting to lower the capital gains tax was simply a conversation between Kevin Hassett and Larry Kudlow on Fox News, who said, word for word, he wants to hit people with things that are promises that we're going to do if the Republicans have power in the future. So you can expect a lot more policy between now and the midterms. And I'm sure that's why he was talking to you, Larry, about your great ideas on capital gains. Which, for those curious, was simply indexing capital gains to inflation and then exempting a larger amount for a primary residence. Or again, word for word, I spoke to him. He liked the idea of the indexing. He liked the idea of a bigger exemption, and the boss is very interested in those ideas. Look, in all honesty, when it comes to Trump, here's what I've noticed. Instead of him coming out with a formal written policy and then being torn to shreds, he simply leaks the idea into social media to see how people react. It comes through his allies, other people close to him, maybe a post on X, and then he gauges people's reaction to determine whether or not it's something to carry forward with. And if not, like the 50-year mortgage, you just never hear from it again. To me, that's just his campaign strategy, and it's a smart idea to test new concepts before he determines if they're worth expanding on. However, the bad news is that because this is actually getting a lot of positive attention online, the reality is it's going to be very unlikely to actually pass for 2 reasons. Number 1, it has to go through Congress. The reality is, most tax changes have to be passed through Congress, and the chance of them doing anything before midterms is pretty much impossible. Not to mention, Republicans in Congress have floated indexing capital gains in the past, and the issue lacks universal support, and it comes with an estimated cost of $200 billion. So on that front, it's pretty unlikely. Even with number 2, he could try to skip Congress entirely. The argument here is that the Treasury could simply define cost as inflation-adjusted cost in the tax code. But again, the problem here is that this has been tried before and failed. Even George Bush tried to pass something similar, but they've determined that it was most likely illegal to do and would face significant uphill scrutiny. But fine, let's even assume that it does go through. Somehow it was able to pass. It then comes down to, how do you time it? Does this apply to new investments today? Does it retroactively apply to all investments in the past? And if that happens, then this could potentially cost up to $1 trillion that we just frankly don't have. That's why I think indexing capital gains to inflation is probably not going to happen. I wouldn't call it a 0% chance, but it's pretty close to 0. However, I do think that there are a few changes that could go into effect. So in terms of what those are, here is what you came for. Overall, I think indexing capital gains to inflation is logical. Like, taxing someone on a gain that's merely just inflation doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, if you buy an asset for 100 grand, sell it for 160, and 160 is worth exactly what 100 was when you bought it, you made nothing. And getting taxed on nothing isn't exactly logical. Even in a savings account, we see plenty of examples out there. You're getting paid 3.5%, but inflation is 4%. But meanwhile, you have to pay taxes on the 3.5% that you get paid from a savings account. I mean, come on. Just make it make sense. That's why I think if the Trump administration wants to make an actual difference with policies that have a chance at passing, it really just comes down to 4 things. Number 1, increase the capital gains home exclusion. Like I said earlier, this has not been updated since 1997, and with home prices hitting brand new record highs, it makes sense to increase the exclusion, index it to inflation, allow more people to sell, and bring a lot more inventory back onto the market. At the same time, we should also allow people to write off losses on a primary residence just like they would pay tax on the gain. I have no idea why this is not allowed. It should be. It just makes sense. Next after that, we have number 2, increase the $3,000 capital loss deduction. See, as it stands right now, if you make an investment and that investment loses money, you could only write off up to $3,000 of that loss against your ordinary income. And what's crazy is that that $3,000 has not been updated since 1977. In today's dollars, that would be worth more than $16,000. So in my opinion, that should be updated. Next, we have number 3, index the net investment tax with every other tax bracket. Again, the $200,000 threshold has been frozen in time since 2013, and it drags more middle-class people into a rich person tax every single year. Fixing it costs almost nothing, and I doubt anyone would disagree with that. Just like number 4, stop double taxing dividends. Believe it or not, money that flows to you as a dividend has already been taxed at a corporate level, and then it gets taxed again when it hits your bank account. To me, the double taxation is something that should be a lot more efficient, and in my opinion, just get rid of it. If anything, just bring down all dividends, including REITs, to long-term capital gains once you hold it for more than a year, and there you go, problem solved. Now, obviously, none of this is as exciting as no capital gains taxes at all, but it does fix some of the things that I believe are genuinely broken, and it benefits people who are even buying in today, not just the people who have been holding on for a long time and sitting on huge record profits. But then again, I'm just a random dude on YouTube. I have no idea what I am talking about, so if you agree or disagree, please let me know down below in the comment section. I will do my best to read and reply to as many of you as I can. And also, don't forget, hit the like button, subscribe, and if you want to see bonus videos, including early access to content like this, and member-exclusive content, feel free to join as a channel member. You get an extra video from me every single week, early access, priority responses to all the comments. Would love to have you a part of it. It means the world to me. Thank you so much, and until next time.